A stray dog, his paws raw and bleeding, clawed desperately at the earth. What was he searching for? Those nearby stood in shock. He dug, frantically, driven by a determination that seemed almost impossible. Beneath the dirt, something waited. Something that would change everything. This story begins with a scruffy, battle-worn stray dog navigating the bustling city streets, his gaze intense and alert. His coat is matted, his ribs visible beneath his thin frame, a testament to years spent surviving on scraps and dodging the indifference of passing strangers. But today felt different. A spark lights his tired eyes, a quiet determination setting him apart from the other shadows that haunt the city. The dog's nose twitched, catching a scent that seemed to awaken something primal within him. He began to move with purpose, his paws carrying him swiftly through alleyways and across busy streets. Onlookers barely noticed him, just another stray in a city full of forgotten animals. But if they had looked closer, they might have seen the urgency in his steps, the way his ears pricked forward as if listening for something only he could hear. As the dog reached a quiet, overlooked corner of the city, his behavior changed dramatically. He began to dig frantically, his paws scrabbling at the hard-packed earth between the cracks of the sidewalk. The sound of his claws scraping against the ground echoed off the nearby buildings, creating a haunting melody of desperation. Hours passed and still the dog dug. His paws, already worn from years on the streets, began to bleed, leaving smears of red on the disturbed earth. Yet he persisted, driven by an instinct that seemed to override all physical discomfort. People began to take notice, their gazes lingering a moment longer, as they sensed something different in the scruffy dog's determined stride. A small crowd gathered, watching in a mixture of confusion and concern. Among them was Sarah, a local veterinary on her way home from a long shift. She pushed through the crowd, her trained eye immediately assessing the situation. The dog's condition alarmed her, his bleeding paws, his labored breathing, the way his entire body trembled with exhaustion. "We need to stop him," someone in the crowd suggested. "He's hurting himself." But Sarah held up a hand, her instincts telling her that there was more to this situation than met the eye. "Wait," she said, her voice calm but firm. "He's trying to tell us something." As if in response to her words, the dog let out a plaintive whine, his eyes meeting Sarah's for a brief moment before he returned to his desperate digging. In that fleeting connection, Sarah saw something that deepened her resolve, a plea for help. Not for himself, but for something else. Without hesitation, Sarah knelt beside the dog, her hands joining his in the earth. "It's okay," she murmured soothingly. "I'm here to help. We'll find whatever it is you're looking for." Her actions spurred others into motion. A construction worker from a nearby site brought over a shovel, while others began to clear away the loosened dirt with their hands. The dog, seeming to understand that help had arrived, redoubled his efforts, his determination infectious. As they dug deeper, the sound of their efforts was suddenly punctuated by something else, a faint, muffled cry. Sarah's heart leapt into her throat. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The crowd fell silent, straining to listen. Then unmistakably they heard it again, a tiny meow so weak it was almost inaudible. "There's something down there," someone exclaimed. "A kitten." Subscribe today to join us in sharing more heartwarming rescues. Your support, likes, and comments help bring these stories of hope and love to life. Together, let's make a difference, one furry friend at a time. The revelation sent a surge of energy through the group. They worked with renewed vigor, carefully removing the dirt and debris. The stray dog, despite his exhaustion, refused to leave, his eyes fixed on the spot where the sound had emanated from. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Sarah's hand brushed against something soft. With utmost care, she reached in and gently extracted a tiny, dirt-covered kitten. The little creature was barely moving, its eyes closed and its breathing shallow. A collective gasp went up from the crowd. The stray dog, his mission finally complete, collapsed beside Sarah, his eyes never leaving the kitten. Sarah cradled the tiny life in her hands, her medical training kicking in as she assessed its condition. "We need to get them both to a vet immediately," she announced, already pulling out her phone to call her clinic. As they waited for transport, Sarah turned her attention to the stray dog. His paws were in terrible condition, and now that his adrenaline was fading, he was showing signs of severe exhaustion and malnutrition. Yet even in his weakened state, he remained vigilant, his eyes fixed on the kitten. "You're a hero," Sarah told him softly, gently stroking his matted fur. "You saved this little one's life." When help arrived, Sarah insisted on accompanying both animals to the clinic. As they drove, she couldn't help but marvel at the unlikely pair, a stray dog who had risked everything to save a kitten he had somehow known was in danger. At the clinic, both animals were rushed into care. The kitten, barely a few weeks old, was severely dehydrated and malnourished. It had likely been abandoned or lost, somehow becoming trapped beneath the pavement. Without the dog's intervention, it would have certainly perished. The stray dog's condition was also critical. Years of neglect had taken their toll, and the ordeal of the rescue had pushed him to his limits. As the veterinarians worked to save both lives, Sarah found herself pacing the waiting room, her mind racing with questions. How had the dog known the kitten was there? What had compelled him to dig so tirelessly, to risk his own well-being for a creature he had never met? The more she thought about it, the more Sarah realized she was witnessing something extraordinary, a testament to the depth of compassion that animals were capable of. Hours passed, each minute feeling like an eternity. Finally, the lead veterinarian emerged from the treatment area, a tired but relieved smile on her face. "They're both going to make it," she announced. "It's going to be a long road to recovery, especially for the dog, but they're fighters." Sarah felt tears of relief spring to her eyes. "Can I see them?" she asked. The vet nodded, leading her to a quiet room where both animals were resting. The kitten, now clean and wrapped in a warm blanket, was sleeping peacefully in a small incubator. Beside it on a comfortable bed lay the stray dog. His paws were bandaged and he was hooked up to IVs, but his eyes were open, watching the kitten intently. As Sarah approached, the dog's tail gave a weak thump against the bed. She knelt beside him, gently stroking his head. "You did it," she whispered. "You saved the kitten. Now it's time for both of you to rest and heal." In the quiet hours that followed, the veterinary clinic became a sanctuary of healing. Sarah remained by their side, her presence a constant comfort as both animals received the urgent care they needed. The medical team worked tirelessly, cleaning and bandaging the dog's raw paws, administering fluids to combat his dehydration, and treating the numerous wounds that years of street life had left behind. Meanwhile, the tiny kitten required even more delicate attention. Her body temperature had dropped dangerously low during her ordeal beneath the earth, and every breath seemed to be a struggle. The veterinarians carefully warmed her, providing the nutrients her fragile body desperately needed through a feeding tube. The process was slow and delicate, requiring constant monitoring and adjustments to ensure her survival. Throughout the night, the dog's eyes rarely left the incubator where the kitten lay. Despite his own discomfort and exhaustion, he remained alert, responding to every small sound or movement from his tiny companion. The medical staff marveled at his devotion, noting how his vital signs would stabilize whenever the kitten was brought near. His protective instinct seemed to give him strength beyond his physical condition. Furthermore, each hour brought small signs of improvement. The kitten's breathing grew stronger, her tiny heart beating with more regularity. The dog, though still weak, managed to consume small amounts of food and water, his body slowly beginning to respond to the treatment. The veterinary team worked in shifts, ensuring both patients received continuous care throughout these critical first hours. Soon, morning light began to filter through the clinic windows, bringing with it renewed hope. The kitten had started showing interest in her surroundings, her tiny paws kneading the air whenever someone approached. Her eyes, though still not fully open, would squint in response to gentle touches and voices. The dog, meanwhile, had managed to lift his head, his tail offering weak but determined wags whenever Sarah or the medical staff checked on him. Dr. Martinez conducted another thorough examination, her experienced hands gentle as she assessed their progress. The results were promising. Both animals were responding well to treatment, though they would need continued care and attention. She shared her findings with Sarah, explaining the long-term care requirements and potential challenges they might face during recovery. Moreover, the question of their future loomed large. Both animals would need a stable, caring environment to fully recover, and Sarah had already made her decision. Without hesitation, she began making arrangements to take them both home. The clinic staff helped her gather supplies, special food for the kitten, medication for both, and detailed care instructions. They also provided guidance on creating a suitable recovery space at home. In addition to the medical supplies, Sarah collected items to make them comfortable: soft bedding, gentle cleaning supplies, and appropriate toys for when they were stronger. She transformed a corner of her apartment into a recovery sanctuary, complete with everything they would need. The space was warm, quiet, and designed to allow both animals to heal while remaining close to each other. The journey home was filled with careful preparation. Sarah had arranged her schedule to provide the constant care both animals would need. She had studied their medical requirements thoroughly, determined to give them the best possible chance at recovery. The tiny kitten, now wrapped in warm blankets, remained in a special carrier, while the dog traveled beside her, his eyes never leaving his small companion. Subsequently, their arrival home marked the beginning of a new chapter. Sarah gently settled them into their prepared space, ensuring both were comfortable and secure. The dog, though exhausted, remained attentive to the kitten's every movement. His protective nature seemed to grow stronger with each passing hour, as if he understood that their journey together was far from over. The following days established a careful routine. Sarah administered medications, changed bandages, and provided the constant care both animals needed. The dog's recovery progressed steadily. His paws began to heal, his appetite improved, and his strength gradually returned. Yet his most remarkable feature remained his devotion to the kitten, watching intently as Sarah fed her, his ears perking up at the slightest sound of distress. Eventually, weeks passed, bringing significant improvements. The kitten, once so fragile, began showing signs of typical kitten behavior, attempting to play, exploring her surroundings with increasing confidence, though never straying far from her protector's watchful gaze. The dog's physical recovery was equally impressive, his coat regaining its luster, his eyes brightening with renewed life, his steps growing stronger each day. The bond between them deepened with each passing day. The dog would gently clean the kitten's fur, his actions so tender it brought tears to Sarah's eyes. The kitten, in turn, found comfort in sleeping pressed against his side, her tiny body rising and falling in sync with his breathing. Their connection, forged in desperate circumstances, blossomed into something extraordinary. Consequently, their recovery progressed beyond just physical healing. The dog, who had known only the harsh reality of street life, learned to trust and relax in his new environment. The kitten, saved from certain death, grew into a playful and affectionate young cat. Together, they created their own unique family dynamic, with Sarah as their devoted caregiver. The transformation continued as months passed. The dog's protective instinct never wavered, but it evolved into a gentler, more nurturing presence. He would watch with patient eyes as the kitten practiced her climbing skills, ready to cushion any falls with his body. The kitten, growing more adventurous each day, always returned to him for comfort and companionship. Sarah watched their relationship develop with wonder and joy. What had begun as a desperate rescue had evolved into something truly remarkable. The dog, once a lonely stray, had not only saved a life but had found his own purpose. The kitten, rescued from beneath the earth, had given him a reason to trust and love again. As night fell, Sarah would often find them curled together, the dog's gentle frame protectively wrapped around the kitten's tiny form. They would watch the world outside their window together, two unlikely companions who had found their way home through extraordinary circumstances. In those quiet, tender moments, she realized that their connection went beyond mere survival. It was a bond born from resilience, trust, and the instinct to protect. It was clear that whatever had brought them together wasn't just coincidence. It was something deeper, a love that had emerged from shared vulnerability and unwavering compassion. Under the soft glow of moonlight, their story spoke of more than just a rescue. It became a reminder that in the world's quiet corners, love and healing often blossom in the most unexpected ways, between those who need it most, showing us that sometimes kindness is the only bridge needed to bring us closer. She found him, tiny, helpless, his eyes still shut, thrown down, bleeding, trembling in pain. His faint cries echoed desperation. But at that moment, something powerful began, a fierce fight for survival, an act of unexpected kindness. and a bond that would defy the odds. This is a story you won't forget, where hope emerges from the darkest shadows.